When people say, she's rich, she won't mind, they don't know I've calculated every single move. They came into my house asking to stay for 2 weeks, and within 2 months. They were trying to get their names on my deed. The night I played that recording of Mom Won't Mind in front of the entire neighborhood was the night they left empty-handed. My name is Margaret O'Rourke Maggie, to those who've earned the right, and at 62. I've learned that a house holds more than just people. It holds memories in every creak of its floorboards, every whisper of wind through its century-old walls. The house at 47 Lighthouse Road has been mine for 34 years, though it's stood here in Harbourview, Maine, since 1898. My late husband Patrick and I bought it when Lucas was barely walking, back when the mortgage payments meant beans on toast 3 nights a week. Now it's paid off. Every splinter and shingle earned through decades of my work at the Seabrook Harbour Authority, managing cargo schedules and customs paperwork until my eyes burned. That May evening when everything started, I was standing in my kitchen, watching the sun bleed orange across the harbour. The old wood floor groaned under my feet, a familiar song I'd memorised over the years. The house smelled of lemon oil and sea salt, the way it always did after I'd spent the day polishing Patrick's grandfather clock in the hallway. These walls had absorbed our lives, Lucas's first steps across the worn pine planks, Patrick's last breath in the upstairs bedroom, my tears and laughter soaking into wood grain like varnish. Lucas called at 6:43 p.m. I remember because I was timing the lobster pot, and Patrick had taught me that 8 minutes made the difference between perfect and rubber. "Mum, I need to ask you something." His voice carried that particular strain that meant Bethany was listening. My daughter-in-law had a way of hovering during his phone calls, her presence palpable even through the line. "What is it?" "Sweetheart, Beth's parents, they're in a bit of a situation. With their house." I turned off the burner, already knowing where this was heading. Gerald and Diane Pierce Bethany's parents were what we call big fish in a small pond types. They'd moved to our coastal town from Worcester 5 years ago, all loud confidence and designer outlet clothing, acting like they'd discovered Maine rather than invaded it. "What kind of situation?" I asked, though I could guess. Gerald had been bragging at the Harbour Festival about his real estate ventures, flipping houses with creative financing. Creative, in my experience, was just another word for reckless. Their latest flip went bad. Really bad. They need a place to stay while they sort things out. Just 2 weeks. "Mum? Maybe 3? Through the window, I could see the lighthouse beam starting its nightly rotation. This house had been our lighthouse, guiding us through storms. Now they wanted to dock here. "Where else have they looked?" I asked. Silence. Then Bethany's voice, grabbed from Lucas, Mrs. O'Rourke. "Mom, we're family. Family helps each other. Family." She'd been married to Lucas for 3 years and still couldn't remember that I preferred Maggie. But suddenly we were family when they needed my roof. 2 weeks, I said finally, the word yes dying in my throat. "That's all?" "You're the best. Mom," Lucas said, relief flooding his voice. "You won't even know they're there." I hung up and stood in my kitchen, listening to the house breathe around me. The walls seemed to tighten, as if they knew what was coming. They arrived the next Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. in a rental truck that scraped against my Japanese maple. Gerald emerged first, surveying my property like a conquistador claiming new land. Diane followed, her nose wrinkling at the smell of low tide. Maggie. Gerald boomed, though we'd met exactly 4 times before. This place is fantastic. You know what this land must be worth now. Waterfront property in Harbourview. I watched him calculate square footage with his eyes, seeing dollar signs where I saw Patrick's roses. The guest room is upstairs, I said. Second door on the right. Guest room. Diane laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Oh, honey, we'll need more space than that. Gerald has his work equipment, and I have my crafting supplies. We'll take the whole second floor, if you don't mind. If you don't mind. The first of many presumptions. As they hauled box after box up my stairs, far more than any 2-week stay required, I heard Bethany whisper to Lucas in the hallway. The old house carried sounds like a conductor, bringing her words straight to me. See, I told you Mom wouldn't mind. She's got all this space. And it's not like she needs the money. She's rich anyway. Rich. Because I owned my home. Because I'd saved and scrimped and held on to what was mine. That night, I lay in my bedroom, listening to footsteps above me in rooms that had been empty since Lucas left. The house groaned differently under their weight, an unfamiliar protest. Through the floor. I heard Gerald on the phone. Yeah, we're all set. My mother-in-law's place. Right on the water. She won't mind, she's rich anyway. The lighthouse beam swept across my window, and I knew then that 2 weeks would never be just 2 weeks. The invasion began with curtains. These are so dated. Maggie, Diane announced on their 4th day, yanking down the lace panels I'd hung in the living room, the ones Patrick's mother had crocheted. I ordered some modern blinds. You'll love them. I found my voice somewhere beneath the shock. Those were handmade. Oh, I'm sure they were special. She waved dismissively, stuffing them into a garbage bag. But we need to think about property value. Gerald says presentation is everything. Gerald had already rearranged my garage, claiming my organization system was inefficient. My tools hung on new pegboards, in places that made no sense. The key to the garage door, which had always hung on the same hook for 3 decades, disappeared. Security upgrade, Gerald explained, showing me a new electronic keypad. Can't be too careful these days. I'll give you the code later. Later never came. By week 2, they'd colonized every common space. Diane's crafting supplies spread across the dining room table like an oil spill. Gerald's mobile office consumed the sun porch where I used to have morning coffee. The kitchen became Diane's domain between 2 and 4 p.m. My creative hours, she called them, as if creativity required exclusive access to my stove. The electricity bill arrived on a Thursday, triple the usual amount. I found Gerald running power tools in the garage at 11 p.m. Fixing things. The water bill showed similar abuse. Diane took 2-hour baths with the jets running in the master bathroom tub, the one she'd decided was underutilized. The landlady's getting fussy about utilities. I heard Diane tell someone on the phone, laughing. You know how they get about their money. Landlady. In my own home. Small things began disappearing. Patrick's pocket watch, a railroad heirloom from his grandfather, vanished from the mantel. Haven't seen it. Gerald shrugged when asked. Maybe you misplaced it. You know, at your age, memory can play tricks. At my age, the condescension dripped like acid. Lucas came for dinner that second Sunday. Bethany orchestrated it like a performance, insisting on cooking. Mom's been so generous. she announced to the table, though I was sitting right there. Not everyone would open their home like this. Well, your mother has the space, Diane added, surveying my dining room like an appraiser. It's really too much house for one person. Mom loves this house, Lucas said quietly, but Bethany's hand on his arm silenced him. Of course she does. Bethany smiled, shark-like. But wouldn't you rather have less maintenance? Maggie less, worry Gerald knows someone who specializes in senior communities. Beautiful condos, right-sized for your needs. Right-sized. My needs. As if they had any idea what I needed. I'm perfectly happy here, I said. Gerald leaned back, his chair creaking ominously. Sure. But happiness and practicality aren't always the same thing. This place must cost a fortune to maintain. Property taxes alone on waterfront. I manage fine. Do you, though? Diane's voice held false concern. Lucas mentioned you retired early from the Harbour Authority. That must have impacted your pension. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Mum's finances are her business. We're family, Bethany said. That word again like a weapon. Family helps each other understand these things. That night, I heard them clearly through the heating vents. She's sitting on a gold mine. Gerald's voice carried. This place is worth 800,000. Easy. Maybe more to the right developer. She'll never sell, Diane replied. Too stubborn. She doesn't have to sell, Gerald said. There are other ways. Power of attorney? Reverse mortgage? Hell, if Lucas had any spine. He's working on him. Bethany's voice, cold and certain. Give me time. I'll make him see that his mother's being selfish. One person hoarding all this wealth while we're struggling. Hoarding. My paid-off home was hoarding. The next morning, I woke to find Gerald in my kitchen at 6 at home, making coffee with my machine, reading my newspaper. Morning, landlady, he said, without looking up. Hope you don't mind. Early bird gets the worm. Everything was, hope you don't mind, and if it's not too much trouble, and since you're not using it anyway. Death by 1,000 presumptions. The 2 weeks became 3, then 4. When I mentioned it to Lucas, Bethany got on the phone. Are you really going to throw my parents out after everything they've done for you? What exactly have they done for me? They've kept you company, maintained your property. Gerald fixed that loose board on the porch. The board that had been perfectly fine until Gerald decided it needed fixing. Mom, Lucas said weakly. Just a little longer. Please. Beth's really stressed about this. That evening, I stood at my kitchen window, watching Gerald conduct some kind of business deal in my backyard, accepting an envelope from a stranger. Cash business. Apparently, using my address. The landlady won't mind. I heard him tell his customer. She's rich anyway. Doesn't pay attention to much. I paid attention. I paid attention to everything, including the briefcase Diane thought she'd hidden in the hallway closet, the one containing documents with my address, plans for renovation, and a business registration for Pierce Property Management, using my home as their business address. They weren't planning to leave. They were planning to stay. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my bedroom door while I was in the shower. Diane's handwriting. Neat and presumptuous. Maggie, please review and sign. Just routine household maintenance agreements. Inside, 3 documents that made my blood turn to ice water. The first appeared innocent enough, a household maintenance agreement for roof repairs. but buried in paragraph 4. In print so small, I needed Patrick's old magnifying glass. The undersigned authorizes Gerald Pierce as representative for all property-related financial decisions. The second was worse. A temporary power of attorney for property maintenance that would grant them authority to make necessary improvements, including refinancing for capital improvements. The third was the kill shot a loan application, partially filled out, with Harborview Community Bank's logo. The loan amount, $300,000. The collateral, my house. The co-signer line waiting for my signature. My hands shook as I photographed each page with my phone. The printer in Gerald's makeshift office hummed constantly these days. Now I knew why. That afternoon, Bethany called Lucas at work, knowing I'd be home alone with her parents. I heard Diane on the phone in the kitchen, confirming an appointment. 3:30 tomorrow at the bank. Yes, Mrs. O'Rourke will be there. Her son is handling the arrangements. I slipped into the hallway, pressing myself against the wall where sound carried best from the kitchen. Gerald was there too. She'll sign, he said. Old people get confused with financial documents. We present it as routine maintenance. She signs where we tell her, done? What if she reads it? Diane asked. Have you seen her squinting at the newspaper? She's too proud to admit she can't see properly. Besides, Lucas will be there. She trusts her son. A pause. Then Diane's laugh, low and ugly. Bethany's got him wrapped around her finger, convinced him his mother's getting senile, needs help managing things. The best part, Gerald's voice dropped to a whisper I had to strain to hear, is once we're co-signers on the refinance, we leverage that into residency rights, establish tenancy. In Maine. That gives us grounds to… Shh. Diane cut him off. She could be listening. Please. Gerald scoffed. She's probably napping. Old lady barely knows what day it is. Even if she figured something out, what's she gonna do? Her own son thinks she needs supervision. Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. There it was. That phrase that had become their anthem. I crept back to my room, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. On my dresser sat the photo of Patrick and me at our 25th anniversary. Fight smart, not hard, he used to say when dealing with difficult port authorities. Document everything. Know their game better than they do. I found Lucas's old tablet, the one he'd left here years ago, still logged into his cloud storage. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but desperate times demanded desperate measures. His email revealed everything. Dozens of messages between Bethany and her parents, dating back 6 months. 6 months. This had been planned before they'd ever lost their house. Lucas is almost ready to agree Mom needs financial oversight. Bethany had written 3 weeks ago. Keep being careless with her things. Make her seem unstable. Another email, from Gerald to a lawyer. Once we establish co-residency and financial interest, forcing a sale becomes viable. Elderly woman, clearly overwhelmed by property maintenance. But the recording was the jackpot. Bethany had sent her mother a voice message through the tablet's messaging app. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Mom's being difficult about the bank meeting. Bethany's voice, irritated and cold. But whatever. If she refuses, we go with plan B. Lucas will convince her she's getting forgetful. Needs help. I've been documenting her confusion, like when Dad moved her things and she couldn't find them. Perfect evidence she can't manage alone. A laugh. God. She actually thinks we care about her. Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. Rich and stupid. I saved everything. Screenshots, recordings, forwarded emails to my own account. My hands had stopped shaking. The fear had crystallized into something harder, colder. That evening at dinner, I played dumb. "Oh, Diane," I said sweetly. I found some papers under my door. Something about the roof. Her eyes lit up. "Yes, just routine maintenance agreements. The bank needs them for their files." "The bank? For your homeowner's insurance?" Gerald jumped in smoothly. "Proof of maintenance? Standard stuff?" "I see." I nodded slowly, playing the confused old lady they thought I was. "Well, I'll need to read them carefully. My eyes aren't what they used to be." "No need to strain yourself," Bethany said quickly. "Lucas can review them for you." "Right. Honey." Lucas looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Sure, Mom. I'll look them over." "That's so thoughtful." I smiled. "But I already have someone who handles these things. My lawyer, Renee Calder. I'll drop them off tomorrow." The table went silent. A lawyer. Gerald's voice pitched higher. "For simple maintenance forms." "Oh, I never sign anything without Renee's review. Patrick always said, never put your name on anything you haven't read twice and understood once. Isn't that right? Lucas, your father was so careful about these things." Lucas's face softened at the mention of his father. "Yeah, Dad always said that." "But the appointment," Diane started. "What appointment?" I asked innocently. "Nothing," Bethany said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." That night, I lay awake listening to the urgent whispers above me. Panic had set in. They knew I was onto something, but not how much. At 2:15, I crept to my home office and opened my laptop. I typed carefully, documenting everything, attaching every piece of evidence. The email to Renee Calder took an hour to compose. By the time I hit send, the lighthouse beam had made 100 passes across my window. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. These walls had protected me for 34 years. Now it was my turn to protect them. Renee Calder's office smelled of leather books and strong coffee, a combination that immediately steadied my nerves. She'd been Patrick's cousin, and more importantly, she'd been practicing property law in Maine for 30 years. "Maggie," she said, after reviewing everything I'd brought. "They've made a critical error. They think you're prey. They don't realize you're the one setting the trap." She spread the documents across her mahogany desk like battle plans. "First, we need to establish paper trails that protect you while giving them enough rope to hang themselves." Her fingers moved efficiently across the papers. "Here's what we're going to do." The occupancy agreement came first. This establishes them as temporary guests, not tenants. No rental payment means no tenant rights. They're essentially visitors who've overstayed their welcome. We'll date it retroactively to their arrival date. Will they sign it? They will if they want to stay another day. Frame it as protection for them, proof they're not responsible for property taxes or maintenance. Gerald will love thinking he's getting something for nothing. Next came the property inventory document. Every item of value in my house, photographed and catalogued. Patrick's pocket watch, still missing, featured prominently with its serial number and insurance appraisal. If it reappears, we document it. If it doesn't, it's theft. Renee said simply. The third document made me smile, a formal Notice of Declined Financial Authorization. This goes to every bank in a 50-mile radius. You explicitly refuse any refinancing, loans, or financial instruments connected to your property. Anyone who processes anything needs your in-person confirmation with legal counsel present. Now for the masterpiece, Renee said, pulling out a thick folder. The Harborview Homestead Trust. The trust was elegant in its simplicity. I would retain life estate the right to live in my home until death, but ownership would transfer to the trust immediately, with the Harborview Historical Society as beneficiary upon my passing. Your son can't contest it, because you're not disinheriting him, you're donating to charity. The Pierces can't force a sale because you're no longer the technical owner. You can't refinance because trusts have different rules than individual ownership. What about Lucas? There's a provision. If he divorces Bethany within 5 years of your death, he becomes co-beneficiary with the Historical Society. Give him a reason to reconsider that marriage when you're gone. We spent 3 hours crafting additional safeguards. A new bank account at a credit union in the next town, with all bills set to auto-pay from a controlled balance account. Post office box for all mail. Security cameras that uploaded to cloud storage, accidentally, visible enough that the Pierces would notice. One more thing, Renee said, pulling out her phone. My nephew Tommy is a building inspector, very thorough, particularly about unpermitted modifications and code violations. The plan was surgical, precise. Everything documented, every move anticipated. I returned home to find Gerald in my father's study, my filing cabinet open, papers scattered across the desk. Lose something? I asked. He didn't even flinch. Just organizing. This filing system is chaotic. Those are my personal documents. Family helps family stay organized, he said, still rifling through papers. At your age, important documents can get misplaced. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of him elbow deep in my files. Gerald, I need you and Diane to sign something. His eyes sharpened. Sign what? An occupancy agreement. It clarifies that you're guests, not tenants. Protects both of us. We don't need. You do, if you want to stay another night. The words hung between us. He calculated quickly sign this meaningless paper or lose access to their mark. Fine, he said. Diane, come here. They signed without reading, exactly as Renee predicted. Gerald even initialed the inventory list, claiming he'd reviewed and agreed to respect all household items. That evening, I installed the cameras myself. Small, white, barely noticeable unless you were looking. One faced the front door, another the garage, a third covering the hallway where the Pierces had been conducting their document preparation. Paranoid much? Diane sneered, noticing the hallway camera. Safety first, I replied. Lots of strangers coming by lately. Gerald's customers, I assume. Her face paled slightly. The next morning, Thursday, I called Lucas from the credit union parking lot. Mom, where are you? Bethany's parents said you had a bank appointment. I'm handling my banking privately now. Lucas, has Bethany been telling you I'm getting forgetful? Silence. She's concerned, he said finally. You have been misplacing things. Like what? Dad's pocket watch. The garage key. Check Gerald's room for the watch. He's the one who moved the garage key system. Mom, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a suggestion to look. More silence. Then, Bethany says you're being paranoid about her parents. Bethany says a lot of things, like, Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. I heard his sharp intake of breath. What? Ask her about the refinancing plan. Lucas. Ask her why her parents need me to co-sign a $300,000 loan against my house. That's... Mom, that's crazy. Is it check your email from 3 weeks ago? The one where Bethany discusses making me seem unstable? I hung up and walked into the credit union. The assistant manager, a young woman named Sarah, who'd helped me set up the new accounts, smiled warmly. Mrs. O'Rourke. Everything's set up. The automatic payments will start next month, and the balance limit means no one can overdraw. Your main savings are completely separate now. Perfect. And the safety deposit box? Ready for you. She handed me the key. Whatever you want to protect will be safer than Fort Knox. That afternoon, I moved all crucial documents to the safety deposit box property deed, trust papers, Patrick's will, insurance policies. The Pierces could ransack my filing cabinet all they wanted now. When I returned home at 4:45 p.m., Lucas's car was in the driveway. I could hear shouting from inside. Lying to me. Lucas's voice, angrier than I'd heard in years. Baby, your mother's twisting everything. Bethany's manipulation tone. I saw the emails. I saw the loan application. I walked in to find them in the living room. Gerald sat on my couch like a king on his throne. Diane had her arm around Bethany, who was crying performance tears. Lucas stood apart from them all, holding his phone, his face flushed with betrayal. "Mum," he said when he saw me. "I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." "Language," I said mildly, though my heart soared. "They were going to steal your house. They were going to..." He turned to Bethany. "You were using me to hurt my mother." "Drama queen," Gerald muttered. "We were trying to help. This place is too much for her." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker I'd bought that morning, and pressed play on Bethany's voice message. "Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. Rich and stupid." The room went silent, except for Bethany's recorded laugh echoing off the walls. "You have 30 days, I said quietly. "That's more generous than the 14 days I could legally give you. Find somewhere else to be parasites." "You can't," Gerald started. "I can. I have. Your occupancy agreement specifically states I can terminate with appropriate notice. 30 days is a gift." "Lucas." Bethany reached for him. He stepped away from her. "Don't." As they absorbed this new reality, I added one more thing. "Oh, and Gerald. The building inspector will be here tomorrow at 9 sharp. Something about unpermitted commercial activity in a residential zone. The Great Pierce family renovation weekend began on a Friday morning with Gerald's announcement at breakfast. "We're going to increase this property's value by 30%, he declared, spreading blueprints across my kitchen table without asking. "I've got a crew coming tomorrow. We'll start with the garage, convert it to a proper workshop, then expand the deck, maybe add a mother-in-law suite where the garden is." "How thoughtful," I said, pouring coffee with steady hands. "Will you be pulling permits for all this work?" "Permits slow things down. We'll handle that after, if needed." "Of course." I smiled. "Can I see the plans?" He actually looked pleased as he showed me his amateur sketches. New windows in the garage, a concrete pad where Patrick's roses grew, electrical upgrades to support industrial equipment. Industrial equipment. My woodworking business. I'm expanding. This location is perfect for customers' established neighborhood, respectable address. My address. My respectable reputation built over 3 decades. "Fascinating," I said. Would you like lemonade while you work? I make it fresh. Diane looked suspicious, but Gerald was too drunk on his own plans to notice my cooperation. That would be great, Maggie. See, we're improving your life already. Saturday morning arrived with a truck full of construction materials at 7 a.m. Gerald's crew consisted of 2 young men who looked like they'd learned construction from YouTube videos. They immediately began tearing into my garage walls with sledgehammers. I served lemonade at 9:30 a.m., chatting pleasantly with the workers. Big project, I commented. Gerald must have filed all the paperwork with the city. Paperwork. One of them, barely 20, looked confused. He said this was his place. Oh, it will be, Diane interjected quickly, appearing from nowhere. Soon enough. I retreated to the kitchen, where I had a perfect view of the destruction. By noon, they'd knocked out a weight-bearing wall. The garage ceiling began to sag visibly. At 12:45 p.m., I called the city building department. I'm concerned about construction next door, I said, truthfully. After all, Gerald was destroying property next to my house. The fact that it was attached was a technicality. No permits posted, and it looks structurally dangerous. We'll send someone right away. Ma'am, unpermitted construction is a serious violation. Tom Brennan, the inspector, arrived at 1:15 p.m. I recognized him from the harbor. His daughter had played volleyball with Lucas in high school. Mrs. O'Rourke. He looked confused. The complaint was about this address. Oh my goodness, I gasped. I had no idea work was happening. I've been inside all day. We walked to the garage together, where Gerald was directing the installation of a massive beam. Stop work, Tom's voice boomed. Everyone stop immediately. What's the problem? Gerald asked, irritated. You the homeowner. I'm managing the project. Are you licensed? For my own property. This property belongs to Margaret O'Rourke, Tom said, checking his tablet. Unless you've got paperwork saying otherwise. You're conducting unpermitted construction, structural modifications without an engineer's approval, and he looked at the electrical wires hanging exposed. Unlicensed electrical work. The stop work order was beautiful in its thoroughness. Red tagged across the garage, another on the pile of materials, a third on Gerald's truck for good measure. The fine schedule Tom showed Gerald made the man's face turn purple. 5,000 for the unpermitted structural work, 3,000 for the electrical, and 200 per day until it's either properly permitted or restored to original condition. This is insane, Maggie. Tell him. Tell him what? I asked, innocently. I didn't authorize this. You said you were going to fix a loose board. We discussed improvements. Did we? Do you have that in writing? Bethany arrived then, Lucas reluctantly in tow. She'd clearly summoned him to mediate. What's happening? She demanded. Your father destroyed my garage without permits, I said simply. Our garage, Diane corrected. We're investing in our home. Tom looked between us. Ma'am, are these people tenants? Temporary guests, I said, pulling out the occupancy agreement. As you can see, they have no authority to modify the property. Tom read it, nodded, and handed Gerald another citation. You'll need to hire a licensed contractor to restore everything to code. I'll be back Monday to inspect. Monday's too soon. Then the fines continue daily. Your choice. As Tom left, I heard him on his phone. Yeah, we're going to need a full audit on this address. Possible commercial activity in residential zone. Sunday was chaos. Gerald frantically called contractors, but none would touch the project without permits, proper plans, and most importantly, proof of ownership. The few who came to look laughed at the mess. "You took out a bearing wall without support," one said. "That ceiling could collapse any minute. You're lucky it hasn't already." By Sunday evening, the garage was wrapped in yellow caution tape like a crime scene. Gerald had spent the day on the phone with lawyers, all of whom told him the same thing: he had no rights to modify property he didn't own. "This was sabotage," he accused over dinner. "This was hubris," I corrected. "You assumed rights you don't have." "We're family." "No," Lucas said quietly. "You're grifters who tried to steal my mother's house." Bethany started crying again, but Lucas didn't move to comfort her. Monday morning. Tom returned with reinforcements: a structural engineer, an electrical inspector, and someone from zoning enforcement. "Mr. Pierce," the zoning officer said, "we've received reports of commercial deliveries to this address. Are you running a business here?" "It's just yes or no." Gerald looked at Diane, who nodded slightly. "Some woodworking. In a residential zone, without a business license, using an address you don't own for commercial purposes." She wrote steadily. "That's fraud, Mr. Pierce, and tax evasion if you haven't reported the income." The final tally was devastating: 12,000 in fines, plus the cost of restoration estimated at 20,000 minimum. All Gerald's responsibility as the project manager who'd signed for the materials. "You did this," Diane hissed at me. "No," I said, sipping my fresh lemonade. "You did this. I just served drinks." That evening, Lucas helped me move Patrick's tools back where they belonged. We found his pocket watch in Gerald's room, wrapped in a sock. "I'm leaving her," Lucas said quietly. "The divorce papers are already drawn up. That's your choice to make." "I should have seen it. Mom. Should have protected you." "You're protecting me now. That's what matters." Gerald spent Tuesday trying to negotiate with contractors, but word had spread through Harborview's tight construction community. The Pierce name was mud. No one would touch the project without full payment up front, plus a premium for the complexity. Wednesday morning, a moving truck appeared. Not to move them out, but to repossess Gerald's woodworking equipment. Apparently, it had been bought on credit, using my address, and the payments had been missed. "You can't take that," Gerald shouted. "Sir, you listed assets at 47 Lighthouse Road. The homeowner says you don't live here. That's fraud." I stood on my porch, serving fresh lemonade to the repo men. The July sun was bright, the ocean breeze perfect, and the sound of Gerald's business collapsing was music. By Thursday, they'd hired the cheapest contractor they could find to do minimum restoration just to stop the daily fines. The work was shoddy, but it would pass basic inspection. Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the Great Pierce family renovation weekend began, Tom signed off on the stop work order. The garage was functional but ugly, patches of new wood against old, nothing matching. "You've destroyed our investment," Diane screamed. "What investment? You invested nothing but audacity." She raised her hand as if to slap me, but Lucas stepped between us. "Touch her, and I'll have you arrested," he said calmly. "Pack your things. You've got 3 weeks left, and then you're gone." The Harborview Community BBQ had been a tradition for 15 years, always held the third Saturday of July in someone's backyard. This year, I volunteered mine. You sure about this, Mom? Lucas asked, helping me string lights between the trees. He'd been staying in his old room since leaving Bethany, their divorce proceedings moving quickly. Never been more sure of anything? I'd invited everyone, the neighbours, the harbour master, 3 city councilmen, Father Murphy from St. Catherine's, and most importantly, Officer Janet Reeves, our community police liaison, and Tom Brennan, who was becoming something of a family friend after recent events. Gerald and Diane had laughed when they saw me setting up. A party, Diane said from the deck. How nice. We'll help host. Of course. This is our home too. Actually, you're welcome to join as guests, I said. But hosting duties are mine alone. She huffed back inside, but I knew they'd appear. They couldn't resist an audience. The morning of the BBQ, I made sure everything was perfect. $300 of seafood from Murphy's Wharf, corn from the Brennan farm, and my famous blueberry cobbler. The piece de resistance, a new sound system I'd bought, with speakers positioned strategically around the yard. Guests began arriving at 4 p.m. The Johnsons from next door brought potato salad. Dr. Patel and his wife contributed samosas that disappeared within minutes. Father Murphy blessed the food and told embarrassing stories about teaching Lucas in Sunday school. By 5 p.m, 60 people filled my backyard. The mood was perfect: warm sun, cold beer, children playing in the sprinklers I'd set up. Gerald and Diane emerged at 5:30 p.m, dressed like they owned the place. Gerald immediately began working the crowd. Welcome to our home, he boomed to Councilman Richards. We're so glad Maggie finally decided to use this space properly. Your home? Mrs. Johnson asked, confused. I thought you were visiting? Temporarily relocated while we sort out our investments, Gerald said smoothly. But family is family. What's Maggie's is ours. I let him talk. Let him dig. Diane cornered the harbour master's wife. This place has so much potential. Once we're officially on the deed, we're going to transform it. Gerald has such vision. On the deed, Dr. Patel overheard. Maggie's selling, not selling. Diane laughed. Transferring, family arrangements. You know how it is with elderly parents. Sometimes you have to help them make the right decisions. Father Murphy's eyebrows rose to his hairline. He'd known me for 30 years. Performed Patrick's funeral service. At 6:15 p.m. I clinked a spoon against my glass. The crowd quieted. Thank you all for coming, I began. This house has been my home for 34 years. Patrick and I raised Lucas here, celebrated every milestone, mourned our losses, built our life. These walls hold our history. Murmurs of approval. Many had been to Patrick's wake in this very yard. Recently, I've been told I'm too old to manage this property, that I need supervision, that family should make decisions for me. Uncomfortable shifting. Gerald stepped forward. Now, Maggie. No one said, actually, Gerald, you did. Frequently. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the new speakers. In fact, let me share some recent family conversations. The first recording was Gerald, old lady barely knows what day it is. Then Diane, at her age, memory plays tricks. But the crescendo was Bethany's voice, crystal clear across the yard. God, she actually thinks we care about her. Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. Rich and stupid. The silence was deafening. But wait, I said cheerfully. There's more. I played the conversation about the refinancing scheme, about establishing residency, about forcing me into assisted living. Father Murphy's face darkened. Officer Reeves pulled out her notepad. Tom Brennan looked ready to issue more citations. "That's taken out of context," Diane shrieked. "Really, what context makes fraud acceptable?" I asked. "What context justifies trying to steal an elderly woman's home?" "We're family," Gerald roared. "No," I said firmly. "Lucas is family. You are opportunists who saw a widow with property and thought, easy mark." Councilman Richards stepped forward. "Mrs. O'Rourke, are you saying these people attempted financial elder abuse?" "I'm saying they tried. They failed." "This is slander," Gerald threatened. "Truth is an absolute defense," said a new voice. Renee Calder walked through the gate, fashionably late, but perfectly timed. "I'm Mrs. O'Rourke's attorney. Everything she's stated is documented. We have emails, recordings, and fraudulent loan applications." Furthermore, Officer Reeves added, "attempting to defraud an elderly person of property valued over $250,000 is a felony in Maine." The crowd had formed a natural circle, the Pierces at the center like they were in stocks. "You people don't understand," Diane sputtered. "We improved this place. We invested." "You destroyed my garage and got fined $12,000, I interrupted. "You stole my deceased husband's belongings. You used my address for fraudulent business purposes." "Mom?" Bethany appeared, mascara running. "Tell them we're family. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I looked at my soon-to-be ex-daughter-in-law. "You called me rich and stupid. Which part did you misunderstand?" Lucas stood beside me. "The divorce will be final in 30 days. After that, I never want to see any of you again." "You can't just throw us out," Gerald bellowed. "Actually, I can. The 30-day notice I gave you has 20 days remaining. However," I paused, savoring the moment, "if you leave voluntarily within 48 hours, I won't press charges for theft regarding Patrick's watch and the 17 other items you've hidden in your room." 17. Diane went pale. "The cameras caught everything. Every trip to your room with my belongings, the silver candlesticks, the antique compass, even the cash from my emergency drawer." The crowd murmured. In a small town like Harborview, reputation was everything. The Pierces had just lost theirs. "We'll sue," Gerald threatened. "Please do." Renee smiled. "Discovery will be fascinating, especially the part where you tried to file a business license using an address you don't own." Dr. Patel spoke up. "Mrs. O'Rourke, are you safe with these people in your house?" "Oh, yes." I smiled. "Officer Reeves has offered to increase patrols. Tom knows to watch for any more improvements, and Lucas is staying here now. Plus," Mrs. Johnson added loudly, "we neighbors will be watching. Anyone tries to hurt Maggie, they'll answer to all of us." A chorus of agreement rose from the crowd. 60 people, all staring at the Pierces with disgust. "This isn't over," Gerald hissed. "Yes, it is," I said. "You have 48 hours. After that, trespassing charges will be added to the list." They retreated to the house, Diane pulling Bethany, Gerald stomping like a child. The party continued until 10 p.m. Every guest made a point of telling me they'd watch for moving trucks, keep an eye on my property, support me however needed. The story would be all over town by tomorrow, the out-of-towners who'd tried to swindle Maggie O'Rourke and got caught red-handed at her own BBQ. As I cleaned up, Lucas beside me, stacking chairs. He said, "That was brilliant, Mum. Your father always said the best revenge is served at a community gathering. Maximum witnesses, minimum violence. I'm sorry I brought them into your life. You brought Bethany. She brought them. And now they're all leaving." That night, I heard frantic packing upstairs, arguments about whose fault it was, what to take, where to go. I sat on my porch, listening to the ocean, feeling my house exhale with relief. By Monday morning, 2 moving vans appeared. The Pierces loaded their belongings under the watchful eyes of Officer Reeves. Tom Brennan, who happened to be checking permits nearby, and a dozen neighbours who'd found reasons to be outside. "Don't think this is over," Diane spat as she passed me. "Oh, I do," I replied. "Completely over." Bethany said nothing, just glared. Gerald looked defeated. His big plans collapsed like my garage ceiling almost had. As the vans pulled away at 2:45 p. Mrs. Johnson brought over fresh cookies. "Good riddance," she said. "Patrick would be proud." He would be. I'd protected our home, our history, our memory. The house was mine again. The walls seemed to straighten. The floorboards ceased their anxious creaking. Home. They returned like thieves at dawn. Sunday, 6:23, thinking the early hour would spare them witnesses. They were wrong. Mrs. Johnson was already at her window with coffee and her phone. Tom Brennan just happened to be jogging by. Officer Reeves sat in her patrol car at the corner, having received my call at 6:15 a. when the security cameras alerted me to movement outside. The Pierces had brought reinforcements, Gerald's brother, 2 younger men who looked like hired muscle, and, surprisingly, a woman with a clipboard who tried to look official. "Property management inspection," the woman announced when I opened the door. "We need to verify the condition of our client's residence." "Your clients?" I asked, recording everything on my phone. "The Pierce family. They have established residency rights that require—" "Stop." Renee Calder stepped out from my kitchen, where she'd been waiting since 6 a. "I'm Mrs. O'Rourke's attorney. May I see your credentials?" The woman fumbled, produced a business card for Premier Property Advocates, a company that, we'd later discover, didn't exist. "These people have no residency rights," Renee continued. "They were guests who received proper notice to vacate. They left voluntarily yesterday. Any attempt to re-enter constitutes trespassing. We have belongings inside." Gerald pushed forward. "Personal property. You can't keep our things." "Everything you brought was removed yesterday," I said. "I have signed receipts from the moving company confirming all boxes were loaded." "You're lying. Our important documents are in that house." By important documents, he meant the fraudulent paperwork they'd hidden in the attic forms with my forged signature. Fake powers of attorney. The works. Lucas had found them the night before while helping me check every room. "If you're referring to the forgeries hidden in the attic insulation," Officer Reeves said, approaching. "Those are evidence now." Gerald's face went white. "You can't prove—" "Actually, we can." Tom Brennan held up his phone. "Amazing what security cameras catch. You entering the attic at 11:43 p.m. on Thursday with a folder. Same folder we retrieved yesterday." The inspection woman started backing away. "Don't leave yet," Officer Reeves said. "Impersonating a property official is a crime." "Now," I said, stepping onto my porch. You have two choices. Leave immediately and never return, or I press charges for attempted breaking and entering, fraud, forgery, and criminal trespass. This is our home, Diane screeched, pushed past Gerald. We established residency. We got mail here. Mail fraud, too, Renee asked, making notes. Fascinating. Bethany emerged from their car, dressed in black, like she was attending a funeral. Lucas, she called out. Tell them we're family. Lucas appeared beside me. We're not family. The divorce papers were filed Friday, expedited due to fraud and criminal activity. You planned this, Gerald said, his voice low and dangerous. You set us up from the beginning. No, I replied. You targeted me from the beginning. I just refused to be a victim. The younger men Gerald had brought started moving toward the porch. Officer Reeves put her hand on her radio. I need backup at 47 Lighthouse Road. Possible escalation. Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived. The small crowd of neighbors had grown to 15, then 20, everyone recording on their phones. You destroyed our lives, Diane wailed. We have nothing, nowhere to go. You have exactly what you brought into my home, I said. Nothing but schemes and entitlement. Gerald made one last, desperate play. I want our renovation costs reimbursed. We improved this property. You mean the $12,000 in fines you incurred, the $20,000 in repairs needed to fix your damage? I laughed. Send me a bill. I'll frame it. Mom. Bethany tried once more, tears streaming. How can you do this to family? Family doesn't try to steal from each other, Lucas said. Family doesn't call each other rich and stupid. I pulled out my phone one more time, played the recording for the gathering crowd. Mom won't mind. She's rich anyway. That's who you are, I said. Parasites who thought you found an easy mark. The property management woman was in handcuffs now, being led to a patrol car. She was actually Gerald's cousin, it turned out, playing dress-up with a fake business. Final warning, Officer Reeves announced. Anyone not residing at this address needs to leave immediately or face arrest. But Gerald couldn't let it go. He lunged forward, trying to push past me into the house. It's ours. We earned it. Tom Brennan and Lucas caught him before he reached me. Officer Reeves had her handcuffs out in seconds. Gerald Pierce, you're under arrest for attempted assault and criminal trespass. No, Diane screamed. You can't. Ma'am, step back, or you'll be arrested too. The scene was chaos. Gerald in handcuffs, Diane sobbing, Bethany shrieking about unfairness, neighbors filming everything. The sun was fully up now, 7:45 a.m., and half of Harborview was witnessing the Pierces' complete humiliation. As Gerald was put in the patrol car, he looked at me through the window. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I mouthed back. Diane and Bethany were given 5 minutes to leave or face arrest. They sat in their car, Diane making frantic phone calls to lawyers who wouldn't take her calls on a Sunday. Bethany texting Lucas desperately. He'd blocked her number. Show's over. Folks, Officer Reeves announced to the crowd. But everyone stayed. A protective circle around my property until the Pierce's car finally pulled away at 8:10 a.m. Mrs. Johnson brought me tea. You okay, dear? Never better. The locksmith arrived at 9 a.m. Prearranged, of course. Every lock changed, new deadbolts installed. Security system upgraded. By noon, my house was a fortress. Lucas and I spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't been able to do in months, enjoying my home. We sat on the deck, watching the harbour, eating lunch in peace. "They'll try again," he said. "Let them try. Everything's legal. The house is in the trust, protected. They can't touch it, or me." At 3 p.m., Renee called. "Gerald made bail. There's a restraining order in place. He comes within 500 feet of you or your property. He goes to jail." "What about Diane and Bethany?" "Included in the order. The judge was not amused by the evidence, especially the forgeries." That evening, as the lighthouse began its nightly rounds, I stood in my father's study, my study now. Everything was back where it belonged. Patrick's watch ticked on the mantel. The photos were straight. The floors no longer groaned with strangers' weight. Lucas found me there. "Mum, there's something you should know." Bethany texted from a friend's phone. "They're staying at a motel in Rockport. She says they'll be back with a better lawyer." "They can try," I said. "But Harborview has a long memory. They'll never be welcome here again. You know the whole town's talking about this. Mrs. Chen at the grocery store called them those awful pirates who tried to steal Maggie's treasure." I laughed, really laughed. For the first time in months. Pirates. Patrick would have loved that. The next morning's Harborview Gazette ran the story on page 2, "Local Woman Foils Property Fraud Scheme." They didn't name the Pierces directly, but everyone knew. In a small town, everyone always knows. Gerald's arrest record, however, was public, as were the fines, as was the restraining order. By Monday afternoon, I received 17 offers of support from neighbours, 3 pro bono legal services offers, and 1 marriage proposal from Mr. Hennessy at the Senior Centre for Protection. He said with a wink. The Pierces were gone, their reputation destroyed, their schemes exposed. But the best part came Monday evening, when Tom Brennan stopped by with final paperwork. "The inspection's complete. No Pierce can ever claim residency or property interest here. It's all documented. Filed with the county." "Thank you, Tom." "Thank you, Mrs. O'Rourke. You showed them that Harborview takes care of its own." As he left, I locked my door, my lock, my house, and smiled. The walls seemed to exhale one final, satisfied breath. We were home. The locksmith finished at 4:17 p.m., handing me the new keys with a satisfied nod. 6 keys, total 2 for me, 2 for Lucas, 2 for the safety deposit box at the bank. No extras. No spares hidden under flower pots. Never again. "That should do it, Mrs. O'Rourke," he said, testing the deadbolt one final time. "Nobody's getting through that without your say-so." I stood on my porch after he left, watching the afternoon sun paint the harbour gold. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the very timber had been holding its breath for months and could finally exhale. Every window reflected the light differently, cleaner, clearer. Inside, I walked through each room, my footsteps echoing on floors that no longer protested under unfamiliar weight. The dining room table was mine again, no craft supplies spreading like cancer across its surface. The sun porch had returned to its purpose, my morning coffee spot, my evening reading nook. Not Gerald's office that reeked of his cheap cigars. Lucas stood in the doorway of what had been his childhood room, now reclaimed from the Pierces' invasion. "It's like they were never here." "No," I corrected. running my hand along the doorframe where height marks still showed his growth from age 3 to 18. They were here, and we survived them. The company arrived at 5 p. Sharp, Harbourview Property Management. Bonded and insured, recommended by Renee. They installed the new security system with quiet efficiency cameras at every entrance, motion sensors, a panic button that connected directly to the police station. The cameras record to the cloud, the technician explained. 30-day rolling storage, accessible from your phone. Anyone comes near your property, you'll know. By 6 p. It was done. My house had become a fortress, but somehow it still felt like home. The walls that had absorbed 34 years of laughter and tears now stood guard, vigilant and protective. The doorbell rang at 6:30 p. The new video doorbell showing me exactly who stood outside before I even rose from my chair. Tom Brennan, holding an envelope. "Final paperwork," he said when I opened the door. "The no trespassing signs are officially registered. Anyone ignoring them faces immediate arrest." I signed where he indicated, then watched as he personally installed the signs, one at the driveway entrance, another by the front walk, a third at the property line facing the street. Bold black letters on white metal, impossible to miss or misinterpret. "That should do it," Tom said, stepping back to admire his work. "Though honestly, Mrs. O'Rourke, I don't think you'll need them. Word's gotten around. The Pierces won't find any friends in Harbourview, or in most of Maine, for that matter." As evening settled over the harbour, I sat in Patrick's old chair, my chair now, and opened the envelope Renee had sent over. The Harbourview Homestead Trust documents, officially filed and irreversible. The house was protected forever, beyond the reach of schemes and schemers. When my time came, it would serve the community through the Historical Society, never to be carved up by developers or stolen by grifters. Lucas brought me tea, sitting in the chair across from me. "Mum, I need to say something." "You don't need to apologize again." "No, not that." "Well, yes, that too. Always. But I wanted to say, you're incredible. The way you handled them, the way you fought back. Dad would be so proud. Patrick would be proud. He'd always said I was tougher than I looked, smarter than people assumed. A 62-year-old widow was supposed to be an easy mark. The Pierces had learned otherwise. At 8:45 p. my phone buzzed. An email from Renee with the subject line, "You'll want to see this." Attached was a news link. The Pierces had tried the same scheme in Rockport, targeting an elderly man whose wife had recently passed. But Rockport had heard about what happened in Harbourview. The man's children were waiting with lawyers and police. Gerald was facing new charges. Diane was named as a co-conspirator. And Bethany's divorce proceedings now included criminal fraud investigations. I set the phone aside and walked to the window. The lighthouse beams swept across the water, steady and sure. Lucas had gone to his room, the house settling into comfortable quiet. No footsteps above, no whispered plots through the vents, no strangers treating my sanctuary like their personal ATM. The key to the new locks sat heavy in my pocket. Such a small thing, really a piece of cut metal. But it represented everything: security, autonomy, victory. The Pierces had thought they'd found a vulnerable old woman, rich and alone, ready to be plucked like ripe fruit. Instead, they'd found someone who'd spent 30 years managing dock workers and ship captains, someone who'd raised a son alone after her husband died, someone who'd paid off a mortgage one careful payment at a time. They'd found someone who understood that kindness wasn't weakness, and that family wasn't a word you used to justify theft. I stood there until the lighthouse completed its 100th revolution, maybe more. The summer evening gradually cooled, salt air drifting through the screens I could finally open without fear of intrusion. Down at the harbour, boats bobbed at their moorings, secure in their slips, like me, anchored safely in my home. Tomorrow, the Harbourview Gazette would run a follow-up story. Next week, the town council would likely pass new ordinances protecting elderly residents from property fraud. The Pierces would become a cautionary tale, whispered about in grocery stores and coffee shops for years to come. But tonight, in this moment, there was just peace. I walked through my house one more time before bed, checking locks out of habit more than fear. In the hallway, Patrick's grandfather clock chimed 10 p. Its sound rich and full in the empty spaces. The house seemed to hum with contentment, every board and beam relaxed. At my bedroom door, I paused. Lucas's light was still on, probably reading or texting friends about his impending divorce. He'd heal from Bethany's betrayal. Eventually. He was young, with time to find someone who understood that love wasn't a con game. The master bedroom, my bedroom, never to be invaded by Diane's 2-hour baths again, welcomed me like an old friend. I changed into my nightgown and stood at the window, looking out at the lighthouse one last time. We did it. Patrick. I whispered to the night. We protected our home. The lighthouse beam swept across my window in answer, a flash of light in the darkness. I climbed into bed, pulling the quilts up to my chin. The house creaked gently, familiarly, a lullaby of wood and memory. No foreign footsteps, no whispered schemes. No one calling me landlady in my own home. Just peace. Just mine. The heavy wooden door downstairs stood solid, its new lock gleaming in the moonlight. The sound of the bolt sliding home had been like a judge's gavel final. Decisive. Just case closed. Home secured. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of justice served cold, please consider subscribing to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'm curious, what would you have done in Maggie's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who might need to hear them. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim.